I had to put the tassels away in my hoodie because, like an idiot, I put them on the outside and they decided to beat the shit out of my head. Let's go a different way today. The sun is out. It's a little bit nippy, but it is perfectly doable. And the CB is in fine form. Oh yeah! Well, that's just a wonderful start to the day, isn't it? Even though it's like 2 o'clock in the afternoon and I've been at work all morning, the day doesn't really start when it's sunny until you're out on the bike. So, welcome back. Thank you for joining again. I wanted to talk a little bit about an interesting new experience that I've had. I have, for the first time, week before last, ridden with a pillion on the back of my Triumph Tiger, and did it again last weekend. The rides that I did were, I think the first one was about 20 miles, and then last weekend they did a round trip which was about 70 miles in total. And I've got to say, as a new rider, I was a little bit intimidated about it. I found it weird, I think is probably the best description, and that's mostly down to the fact that it's obviously very different weight distribution, and because, you know, yes, I can counter quite a bit of the change in weight with the Tiger because it's got adjustable rear suspension. I was able to move it on a couple of clicks to accommodate my girlfriend on the bike. I'll get to the reason why she was riding pillion on my bike in a minute, because that's a very cool reason in itself. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of talk through my experience of riding with someone as a pillion on a motorcycle for the first time. Initially, especially the first, like, pulling out of the driveway was a bit like, what the fuck am I doing? This doesn't make sense. All of the weight's in the wrong place and the bike's behaving completely differently, which it was. And then the moment it started moving, it very much settled back down. I didn't find it particularly challenging at all. Beck, my other half, she's very, you know, she's got some experience on a motorcycle, but she's very calm on the back of the bike, and she's very relaxed, which made life a lot easier. And yeah, it was just a very not as stressful and not as difficult as I think I was expecting. I think I was almost expecting it to be more difficult than it turned out to be, which is usually the case. You usually overthink these things, don't you? But yeah, I got to admit, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it got to the point last weekend, after we'd done, you know, probably over 100 miles in 2 weeks with her as a pillion on the back of the bike, where we were both saying, it's like, this is really good fun, like, we need to do more of this. Which may not happen, because that kind of brings us on to why we had Beck on the back of the bike as pillion in the first place. And that was because she was doing her CBT the weekend before last, which, not dissimilar to myself, I shan't divulge her age, but she's within the same ballpark. She's younger than me, and occasionally reminds me of the fact that she's younger than me, as you would expect from such a delightful person. Love you, really. And yeah, it's basically, she had a CBT, and the weather she did it in was horrendous. So thankfully, one of my mates, he basically works with a riding school, and he was able to kind of spend a couple of hours on the site and just kind of make sure everything was okay. But she did absolutely great in the CBT, especially as she was dealing with 45 plus mile an hour winds and torrential downpours, including a little bit of hail, which, you know, for your first ever riding experience on a motorcycle under your own control, high winds and hail, probably not two things that you want to add to it. But, you know, Beck being the kind of person she is, it was taken as a, well, if I've learnt in that, at least I know I can ride in that, which is absolutely perfect. Yeah, that's the best kind of attitude you can have. Yes, she was absolutely freezing, and I did the good boyfriend thing in that I came up with a hot coffee and a blanket for her so that when she passed she could wrap up warm and kind of get some heat back in her bones. But she did phenomenally well. And then the round trip weekend before, the trip that we did with Beck as a pillion weekend before last, that was actually to go and pick her up her first motorcycle. So she went and got a Lexmoto ZSB 125, and there'll probably be those people who do the whole, well, it's a Chinese bike, you shouldn't have got a Chinese bike, and all that shit in the comments. Cool, if that's what you think, that's absolutely awesome, you guys carry on. The reality is my first bike was a Chinese motorcycle. It was a Mutt Hilt 125. It's the same as everything. If you look after it, it'll look after you. If you treat it like shit, it'll rust and perish away. Look after your stuff and your stuff lasts, basically. And yeah, so she's got this 125, which we went out to a place about 20 miles away from my house, and her first riding experience on her own bike, you know, immediately after or a week after passing her test, was essentially riding the 35 miles on A and B roads back to her house, which is in Cambridgeshire. So it was very much a case of, here's the deep end, off you pop. Which, you know, admittedly, and I don't think she'll have an issue with me saying, in the car park just before she got on the bike there were some fraught emotions, and there was a bit of a panic going on, and I think she was a little stressed by the situation. Oh, I know she was a little stressed by the situation. We've spoken about it afterwards. But she did phenomenally well and promptly went and rode the motorcycle home through some fairly... What the hell are you doing, you twat fink? Dangerous Brian behind the wheel. Yeah, so she basically did her first ride, which was 25-30 miles I think, through some A and B roads on a brand new bike with 0 miles on the clock, and she got it home, and she got it home safe, and it was all under control, and she did really well. And it was fantastic to see someone experiencing that, very similar to the way I did, because she does something quite similar to me in we will both overanalyze something before we go into it, which is kind of hilarious, because you put the two of us in a room and it's like we'll have covered every variable and every possible scenario between us within minutes. But she did phenomenally well. And then the last weekend, the longer pillion ride was, Beck came over to mine, which is here at MK, and then we rode with Beck on pillion on my Tiger back to her house so that we could go out for an afternoon ride on the Saturday. Saturday or Sunday, sorry, on the Sunday. And then we went out for an afternoon ride. We found a nice pub to go and have a Coke and a chat and just general chit chat, and then we rode all the way home again with Beck on pillion on my bike, and it was just like a proper biker couple day, and it was awesome. And I think what was happening is something which I've done, which Beck did, and we've spoken about this, is you get hung up on, oh my god, I need to be a really good motorcyclist really quickly. And it's very, very easy to fall into that trap. I fell into that trap, and I know one of my mates who I work with who's recently done his 125, he was getting stressed out with it, because it's basically, they're turning around going, oh, I'm no good at this, I'm no good at this, I need to be doing better at this, I need to be doing better at this. And you've got to realise that, you know, for the most part, you know, particularly for myself and Beck and my mate at work and stuff like that, this is a leisure activity. You know, this is something to go out and enjoy, and if you're enjoying it, continue doing it. If you stop enjoying it, don't do it. Yes, I understand if you're in a situation where your only form of transport is a motorcycle, that's a very different scenario to be in. But for the most part, I think that there are, you know, opportunities out there for people to do something like a CBT, try out riding a motorcycle for a little while and see if it's for them and see if they enjoy it. And if you do enjoy it, do it some more, but don't go out with the anticipation of I have to go out, you know, I'm the next Rossi, I'm going to be knee down on every corner immediately after passing my test or anything like that. You know, the CBT here in the UK is essentially, it's the compulsory basic training of, yes, you are fit to go out and learn how to ride on public roads. That's the whole point of it. It's to get you to a point where you're in a safe enough state to go out and really start learning, and that's all there is to it. It's very easy to get properly hung up on stuff with it, and I think lots of people do, and a couple of other people I've spoken to have done the same, but you really don't need to. Fast road. It is quite chilly today, but I've actually got, it's not chilly enough to not wear leather gloves and to wear my leather jacket, although I do have a hoodie and base layers and t-shirts and all that sort of fun stuff on underneath. I can get away with a leather jacket today, which is quite good fun, because I've been itching to not be wearing a winter coat. I've done some really interesting winter rides to and from work recently, where I've literally seen ice on my visor and stuff like that, and I'm like, going back to, that's not quite as much fun. But for me, that's a practical issue, because it's faster and cheaper and more convenient for me to ride my bike into the office in London. So why wouldn't I? Honestly thought he was going to go then. So yeah, riding pillion for the first time was an experience. I think it's, you know, don't get me wrong, Becky's quite a slender little thing. She doesn't have much weight to her. So me being 16 stone, which I don't know what that is in American money, but not light and in control of a motorcycle, and having her on the back of the Tiger really didn't make that much difference to me. So I would imagine if one of my 20 stone mates got on the back, I'd have had a very different riding experience, but I don't think I'd carry one of my 20 stone mates more than round the corner if absolutely necessary. I certainly wouldn't be doing, you know, 100-mile round trips like that. You know, if you do, more power to you, that's great. But yeah, not my cup of tea. The other thing is, we were talking about whether or not she should go pillion on the CB, and I love this motorcycle, right? Absolutely adore it. And if Beck decides that she wants to do her full bike license and go down that route, then, you know, this will probably end up being her first big bike as well, because I do think it is one of, if not the best platform for your first big bike. It's so easy to control. And it's got all the poke you could possibly need as a learner. But we were talking about her going pillion on this, and because the seats, so the passenger seat's really small, and I think it will be fine for going down the shops and stuff like that. But when I got this bike, I actually took the rear foot pegs off, because I didn't like the idea of anybody going pillion on it because of how small the seat is. And I'm actually looking at potentially just swapping out the rear seat for a cowl and taking away that functionality altogether, because I just there are some bikes that lend themselves to two-up riding, aren't there? I just don't think this is one of those bikes. I was going to go right there, I'll go left instead. Yeah, I don't see this as a bike particularly well suited to two-up riding. And you know, for me, this is quite a small motorcycle when I'm on it. It's like it fits, but there's not much room. So it's 6 foot tall, 32-inch inseam, that sort of stuff. It does fit, but there's not a lot of extra space on here. And like, if I want to get down and hunch down for any reason or anything like that, my ass is going up on the rear seat a little bit. So yeah, obviously you wouldn't be riding like that with a pillion, but the Tiger, you know, it's doable on this bike. Yes, you could ride pillion with, you could ride with a pillion on this motorcycle, absolutely. But you know, I've got an adventure bike. I've got the Triumph Tiger 800, which, if I've got the bike which is designed, you know, for that sort of riding and has all the farcles to support that, then why wouldn't I use that bike? It would just make for a much more comfortable experience all round. So that's what we did, and you know, it's got a heated seat and heated grips and all that sort of fun stuff. So yeah, but we're now going through CMK, which always looks a little bit industrial to me. Well, a little bit. It is massively industrial looking, but I quite like it. I quite like the aesthetic of Milton Keynes. Very Americanised. But it does lend itself to nippy bikes quite well, because yes, there's a lot of roundabouts, but every road in between most of the roundabouts outside this bit of the city centre is 70 mile an hour. So you can twat around going between roundabouts perfectly legally. And then you can be a complete bellend if you don't want to do it perfectly legally, but that's entirely up to you. So yeah, that's pretty much it really. It wasn't going to be a long video. I just wanted to talk about riding 2-up, and what Beck and I were talking about is maybe we'll do a ride on the Tiger with, you know, a new rider like myself and a very new rider like Beck, both on a motorcycle, and we can put a comms kit on and have a chat whilst we're doing it. We might even record that. That could be quite fun. But yeah, let me know if that's something that you'd be interested in. Oh, and if you subscribe to the channel and stuff like that, like, thank you, that's awesome. I've had like 50 new subscribers in the past 4 weeks, which is just mental. I'm not doing this for subscriber counts and things like that. You know, as I say, we've all got our day jobs and things like that. This is just, you know, some idiot talking shit on a motorcycle because he likes talking shit and likes motorcycles. I don't think it's ever going to turn into much more than that. But I intend on continuing to do it because it's just fun. So yeah, thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed it, like and subscribe, I guess. Bye.